Welcome to the Armchair Trader podcast. This week we are talking about indirectly the battery sector, which I know a lot of people who are regular readers of the Armchair Trader are very interested in. But in particular, we're talking about a company that we have been writing a lot about over the last year, and in our view is one of the more interesting companies that we cover, and that is Euro Manganese. And we are lucky to have the CEO, Marco Romero, on the podcast today, who is going to be telling us a little bit more about the company, its objectives, and recent progress over the last few months. So welcome to the show, Marco.
Great to be here.
No problem. So Euro Manganese, can you give those who are not familiar with it? I mean, there will be people who are, and for those who aren't, I would also encourage you to go to the Armchair Trader website, where there is a lot of information on the company there. But can you give us a quick summary of Euro Manganese, the business, and what you're up to in the high purity manganese space?
Euro Manganese is a public company. We trade in Canada as well as Australia. We have been for the last 6 years working on the development of a large, in fact globally significant, high purity manganese production operation in the Czech Republic. It entails the reprocessing of a very large waste pile that was deposited between 1951 and 1975 in former Czechoslovakia. We're about 90 kilometers out of Prague. And this is now a very advanced project. We are in the midst of completing a feasibility study. We have built a pilot plant, which we operated a few years ago, and will now restart at customer request, while we are building a demonstration plant that is a 7-time scale up of that operation in order to deliver large-scale samples for customer testing and supply chain qualification. And importantly, we're also quite advanced in the permitting of this project, and that's proceeding rather well. We've not encountered any opposition to the project. We're moving along quite quickly. Our goal is to have the feasibility study as well as the demonstration plant completed early next year, and then later on in the year to complete permitting. With all that, we would be in a position to make a final investment decision and hope to be in production by the early part of 2025 as one of the largest producers of these very important battery materials.
So you touched on the fact that it's this is not, I think it's important to emphasize this to listeners, this is not a mining project. This is a project in the Czech Republic, which is actually reprocessing waste that's come from a historic mine where the miner has left a big pile of waste, the grass has grown over it, and what you're proposing to do is take the manganese, the high purity manganese, from out of that waste pile that's already above ground, and as I understand it, has always been a little bit of an environmental hazard. So the project is looking to take that high purity manganese out for battery purposes, and at the same time leave a more sort of environmental friendly and stable residue.
That's very true, Stuart. This is very much a waste recycling project. We don't have the impacts that a typical mining project would have, like drilling, blasting, crushing, milling. And yes, indeed, this is a polluted site, and our plan entails a concurrent rehabilitation of this site. We expect to leave it, in fact, in far better environmental condition than it is today. And that's something that hasn't been lost on local communities, hence the lack of opposition to the project, but also importantly on the regulators and the customers who are looking for environmentally superior projects, of which we believe this will be one of the best available in the world.
And what you're after here is the high purity manganese. So for people who aren't familiar with what that is or what it's used for. Can you explain a little bit of why that commodity is going to be so important?
Well, we're talking about a very high purity, specialized product that is used now in the majority of lithium ion batteries for electric vehicles. In fact, most of the European automakers have committed to using manganese in their battery chemistries. It's pretty much almost every automaker you can think of right now. And what we see is the emergence of a very rapid increase in demand, which has begun now as electric vehicle sales increase, and which we expect will accelerate in the coming years as the plans of these automakers, the governments that want to see electric vehicles come to fruition. And we are focused on this particular deposit for many reasons, one of which it's the largest manganese resource known in Europe right now. It just happens to be one where you can extract an extremely high purity product very efficiently by recycling this waste. And the products that we have been so far producing in our pilot plant are among the highest quality available in the world, which is also very important because the safety and the performance of many of these batteries relies on the quality, the purity of these products. So I think we are ticking a lot of boxes there from an environmental point of view, from a product quality point of view, and very importantly, from a European provenance point of view. We, in fact, expect to become Europe's only primary producer of these products. There is no other project of its type being advanced anywhere in the European continent right now.
And I think that's an important fact to stress, and one when we were first looking at the company, we were actually amazed at that there's just such a dearth of supply of this material in Europe. And then what you're also talking about is from a geographical perspective, it's sitting there in the Czech Republic, and it's almost, you couldn't have placed it better, in fact, in terms of its proximity to the various sort of mega factories that are being built for batteries and for electric vehicles in Europe. I mean, if someone had said, oh, where would you like to place a big deposit of high purity manganese for batteries? I mean, it couldn't be far off from where it is at the moment.
And we feel blessed, in fact, very lucky to have found this resource. And yes, with the advent of this increase in demand across Europe, as the automotive industry mobilizes to really pivot to an electric future, we have an opportunity to become a key supplier of what is an essential battery material, which right now is largely provided out of China. Well over 80, if not 90% of the processing of this high purity manganese takes place in China. And to be able to produce it locally, with the peace of mind that comes with compliance with European environmental standards, focus on quality, the verifiability of the provenance, I think has put us in a very good position, and it's actually attracted a great deal of interest from customers. It's very clear that Europe is determined to develop autonomous, localized supply chains, and we have the opportunity to become a very important player there.
Can you say a little bit about the? I know you've done a lot of research yourself on the evolving European battery market, because this is obviously going to be a very important source of revenue for Euro Manganese. You have spoken already about the sort of importance of the proximity of the project to the fast growing European electric vehicle industry. But what's your perspective on specifically on the European battery market? How do you see that growing in the near future?
Well, the European battery industry is the fastest growing in the world today. There was initially a very Asian focused wave led by China, um, Korea, Japan. And what we are seeing now is that wave washing over Europe. There are a multitude of large battery factory projects and all the related suppliers of battery materials and components. And that is now moving quickly. There's numerous plants under construction from Scandinavia to Italy, a lot of Germany, and we see this great opportunity for us to be a key supplier. We won't be able to supply all of them. There's only so much of this material we'll be able to make. In fact, the demand across Europe and even the UK is expected to outpace what we could ever produce. But for those that will be able to secure this product from us, we'll be able to deliver that peace of mind that comes with knowing how the product is made and having it, locally based. So we we see a great deal of investment right now going into to change the way the vehicles are made, from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. Following that is now the emergence of the battery plants. We're seeing cathode and precursor plants under construction as we speak, and more being on the books right now for development. And we are striving to become that one supplier of choice, with quality, with local sourcing, being some of the key elements here that we can offer.
Can you give us a little bit of a summary of where you are, where the project stands at the moment?
And like I was saying at the beginning, we've been working for 6 years. We spent about $30 million to date on this project. Uh, One key front that we put a lot of effort into is making sure this project can fit in well into local community and local environment. And a lot of attention to detail has gone into designing one that will not only comply with Czech and European Union environmental rules, but one that will truly fit into the community. So a lot of local engagement has taken place. We filed earlier on for what's known as a preliminary mining permit. We secured that very rapidly with really no opposition to it. We filed also our preliminary environmental impact assessment in 2019, actually, late 2019, and we were able to secure the clearing of that filing in the middle of last year, and that essentially gave us the green light to proceed with what is known as the final environmental, social, and impact assessment. That's under preparation as we speak, again, with good, solid, not only regulator, but community consultation taking place. With that, once it's filed and hopefully all approved quickly, we will have the way open for us to go develop this project. In parallel with all that, and it's sort of an iterative process as we receive input from community regulators, we are now finalizing the design of the project in a feasibility study. We're getting now into very detailed engineering, and that should culminate in this feasibility study, which we're now targeting for the end of Q1 next year. And in parallel with all this is discussions with customers. And that's been a very active front for us. There's very serious interest in procuring these products. And that we hope will culminate in the type of commercial agreements, the offtakes, as we call them, that should allow us to lock in the strategic customers that we are after, that could then facilitate financing of this project, something which we would be tackling during 2022. In the meantime, we've been very well supported by a very strong group of shareholders across the world. We're very well financed and have all the funding we need right now to get to that final investment decision sometime next year.
I know you're looking at setting up a demonstration plant. Could you give us some more detail on that and what what the objective of that is?
In 2018, when we were working on our preliminary economic assessment of the project, and when we were designing the process flow sheet for this project, we built a pilot plant. It was very successful, and we were able to confirm that the process flow sheet, the approach that we had taken, was able to produce extremely high purity materials, which was one of our key objectives. And at the same time, to do it in a way that gave us the best possible environmental performance for this project. We distributed these samples to customers, got very favorable responses from that. We signed actually 5 agreements, 5 memorandums of understanding, which are early stage agreements with 5 customers. And more recently, we started getting interest from additional customers for this product and for testing this product. So we decided to restart the pilot plant, and we shipped 7 tons of these tailings, this waste, for processing in that plant. And that will be ongoing for the next few months. In the meantime, we initiated construction of and procurement of all the equipment for a much larger version of this pilot plant, which we call our demonstration plant. It's 7 times larger, and that fabrication is ongoing as we speak. We expect to see the plant shipped later this year to site, and then it will go through a period of installation, commissioning, with the goal of being ready to deliver much larger, multi-ton samples to many customers beginning sometime in the second quarter of next year. And that is a critical step, because as we are not an existing producer, we need to have our products tested, the process flow sheet that we propose to use verified, to give the confidence to the customers that they will be getting the product that they want. It's a process that everyone in the industry has to go through. And it's one that a lot of people underestimate. They think that, sure, I'll build a plant and people will buy our product. But we have to remember, these are highly specialized products that go into very demanding applications. It is not easy to consistently make these very high quality products with incredibly tight technical specifications. And that's where the demonstration plant comes in. It is a scale up of that pilot plant, which was in turn a scale up of a laboratory scale or bench scale testing that we did. And ultimately, it is the proof of concept, the one that is expected to give the customers the confidence that they need to commit to buying our products.
You probably can't name names, but I was just out of curiosity. I was wondering what type of company would you be expecting to deal with directly? Would it be the actual battery manufacturer, or are there other potential customers you could be talking to for something like this?
We've made it no secret that we have been in discussions and even negotiations with a range of customers. We typically would sell our product to a precursor maker. We would deliver to a precursor maker, which would then combine it with the other ingredients, namely cobalt, nickel, and prepare a precipitate, which then goes into making these nano powders that are known as cathodes, very, very fine powders that are almost like ceramic beads at a micro scale, at a nanoscale, actually. And what's happened of late is that a number of the supply chain players, the what we call the downstream players, these now become the battery companies, and ultimately the automotive companies have become active in procuring these products. A lot of them want to secure their future because their future depends on it. Failure to get the products they want can result in interruption of production of even automobiles. If there were to be, say, a complete stoppage of supply of manganese, high purity manganese, a bit like it's happened recently with semiconductors, chips, you can get very significant effects on their supply chains. And we're seeing a great deal more concern about making sure that their supply chains are solid. And the engagement we've had ranges from automotive companies today to battery companies and some of the cathode and precursor producers.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I remember when we first spoke, and it was over a year ago. You were talking about supply chains and how important these were, and at the time, the world was in a different place, and people weren't really experiencing the sort of disruption we're now experiencing, where even basic items here in the UK are not necessarily being delivered on time. So we can see now that supply chain of materials for the some next generation vehicle manufacturers is just going to be absolutely critical.
I was listening to the news this morning and hearing about a Nissan auto plant that has been shut for 2 weeks and now is going to be shut for an additional week because of a shortage of chips, semiconductors. And there are so many now with all the electronics in these vehicles. The same dynamics could easily apply with interruptions in battery metals. For one reason or another, whether it's a supply demand gap or any other factor that could interrupt supply, it makes the automakers ultimately very vulnerable. And this is a very significant shift for them as these new supply chains are being established, as they shift to making these electric vehicles. So these are truly interesting times. And I think we're at the right place and at the right time.
And I'm presuming, yes, as you say, it would require a lot of technical knowledge to be able to make something like this, work in the way that it's meant to.
Yes, indeed. And look, what we had to do as well is to seek a lot of very direct experience and know-how, because nobody has built one of these plants outside of China for decades. All the real practical know-how has been developed in China. And we went to China and sought the support, the expertise of some of the leading players there. And we've been working there now for 5 years. Built our pilot plant there. We're now building our demonstration plant, which ultimately will be relocated to site. And we were able to benefit from that know-how. Furthermore, we also have a leading expert in the production of high purity manganese products that came out of South Africa, where there is one other operation there that's been there for a long time. And he had spent over 20 years at that facility. So a lot of good practical know-how as well as part of our in-house team.
All this work you're doing is going to require a lot of expertise, a lot of technical expertise, both on the regulatory side and on the actual nuts and bolts engineering. Can you give us a little bit more background on who you've got working on the project?
In-house, we have very strong project development, project finance, and importantly, high purity manganese production expertise. I'll give you an example. Our managing director, Jan Votava, in the Czech Republic, is a PhD engineer, but that has been a captain of industry. His last job that he resigned to join us over 4 years ago now is Lafarge Holcim, the large cement and construction materials company. He was heading their operations in the Czech Republic, so he's very familiar with what it takes to operate in the country. He's a very capable, competent man and a great leader. He's built a team around him of professionals in a variety of fields, environmental, science and permitting, engineering, construction, procurement, and all these people now are working as a team to complete the plan, the design of this project, the permitting of this project, and expected to transition over time into the actual construction and ultimately the operation of this plant. That's just one great example there. Our local team is very, very strong, capable, and respected. In Canada, I encourage you to take a look at our management team as well as our board of directors. There's a real depth of experience in developing these resource extraction projects, financing them, great governance, very strong focus on environmental, social, and governance aspects of this type of endeavor. So, good, very strong team, very proud of the team, very committed, very hardworking team.
I just wanted to revisit the environmental aspect of the project. We've already mentioned the fact that this is not somebody going and digging a mine. This is somebody actually taking something out of existing mining waste. The project is right in the middle of Europe. It's in the Czech Republic, so there's a lot of hoops to jump through from an environmental perspective that don't necessarily apply in other parts of the world. Can you just give us a quick summary of the amount of work that's gone into actually getting the permits you need?
Well, I think your intuition is correct. Working in Europe is very demanding. We have some of the most stringent environmental regulations and a very rigorous process to evaluate those. That involves not only regulators that make decisions, governments, but also communities. It's a very open process. Everything is online. Anybody can review, anybody can comment, intervene, and we are held to a very, very high standard, no doubt, which is great. Because the ultimate result is that you can't get away with some of the things that perhaps you could have gotten away with in the past, or that perhaps others can get away with in different parts of the world. So it is a tough process. It is costly, and it has implications for how we designed this project. But like I said earlier, we are blessed, not only because of where we are in the world, but because of the nature of the project. See, these tailings, this waste from this former mining operation has already been mined. It has already been crushed and milled and pulverized. So none of those impacts apply to this project, which gives us, from an environmental point of view, a very significant advantage. Importantly as well, the standards that we are held to in terms of waste management are very demanding. And here again, we're not mining rock to take out a little bit of metal and leaving a big pile of waste behind. This is already waste. So we are not generating any significant new waste, which again helps us a lot in permitting this project and gaining the social mandate, if you want, the support of communities, because that's one of the things that's perhaps least desirable about mining is not only the big hole that's made when you're mining, say, in an open pit, but the big pile of waste that you put beside that. So we're lucky not to have to deal with those impacts. But the real clincher for us here is that, as I mentioned earlier, this is a polluted site. When it was operated in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was done at a time when the environmental standards were quite different than the ones that we have today. And the regulations, the practices, the best practices even, were nowhere near what we are held to today. So the tailings themselves were just put in the floodplain of a valley beside the very large open pit that was dug. And like you said, little grass grew on them, and they were abandoned. These big piles of waste. And what's been happening since this 1975 is that every time it rains on these piles, the water percolates through the tailings and picks up metals and salts and dissolves them. And then these make it into the groundwater and created over these last several decades a plume of pollution underneath, which is flowing not only into groundwater, but it's actually making it into a nearby river. And by reprocessing this waste and by doing everything we do in compliance with these new standards, we will bring this site to a point where this pollution will stop, because we will have to place everything on liners. The waste from the processing or the reprocessing of this material will be put on essentially be contained, will be neutralized, and that'll be the end of that pollution. We won't be able to get back what's already happened. Now, that's gone. It's like the fire has already burned, the smoke has already blown away. But we will certainly be able to stop the future smoke, and that is a major win for the local community. In fact, one of the most gratifying aspects of our community engagement has been just that, just seeing people awaken to the opportunity to stop this pollution, but also to bring this site back to some productive community use. And we've engaged with local children, all kinds of community groups, in searching for ideas on how we can make best use of the site after we're done. Because we'll be there for 25 years with the plan that we have right now, producing these materials, and at the end of which we can bring this site back to productive use, and that's another win for local residents.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, 25 and also 25 years. I mean, you're certainly going to be there for the long term. And really, speaking of which, just finally, I wanted to ask you about what your next steps are. What are the next? I don't want to say obstacles, but the next things that need to be achieved as you progress the project and get it to a point where it can start supplying the battery market, which will of course be very hungry for that high purity manganese.
To reiterate our goals for the next year and a half or so, we want to complete our feasibility study. We want to complete our environmental and social impact assessment, and we want to complete our demonstration plant. And with that, to conclude our negotiations with customers so that we can proceed with project finance as well as construction of this facility so that it can be in production by early 2025.
That's going to be an extremely interesting project for investors to follow, I think. It does tick a lot of boxes in the green investing space, and certainly in the battery material space, which we know has been something a lot of our readers have been following extremely closely. Thank you very much indeed, Marco, for your time this afternoon and just giving us an update on the project. And it was a good summary for those of you who aren't yet familiar with it.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Really appreciate the opportunity to tell our story.
You've been listening to the Armchair Trader podcast. Make sure you visit our website, www.thearmchairtrader.com, for your daily dose of financial markets news and sign up to our free newsletter there.